Can you help me with what we were discussing earlier in understanding the question about God? When you said God is the big power and as us as well. I can't conceptualize that.
Well, the most common misunderstanding that physical humans have about this subject of God is that they keep wanting to accept that they are here in their human form as inferior beings in some way, trying to catch up to something that is more superior. In other words, it's the basic premise that is flawed. What is really happening is that you, as you come forth into this physical time-space realities, are perfect extensions of that which is God. And so it isn't that you're here trying to learn something so that you can be more. It is that you are all of that here wanting to express it here. That's why we begin by talking about allowing in the way we do. That what allowing really is allowing the fullness, the allness, the wholeness, the godness that is me through me in whatever venue that I'm focused in any point in time. And so when you begin to accept that you are an extension of all of that, and when you individually begin to pay attention to how much of that you are allowing to flow or how much of that you are not allowing to flow, in other words, how eager do I feel? How passionate do I feel? How stable do I feel? Am I in a place of clarity or confusion? Clarity meaning open and allowing that, confusion meaning sort of pinched it off temporarily. This source is a fluid, moving source that is available in all times, in all things. And you can allow as much of it or disallow as much of it, but it is always there for your receiving. It is always being offered to you. Physical man has conjured an image of God, and it is logical that he would conjure an image of God that is very much like he is, but it is a very limited view. See, and so the way that you must view God is by getting connected and from your broader eyes seeing it. But as we talked earlier, what you see with your eyes, what you hear with your ears or smell with your nose or taste with your tongue or feel with your fingertips, these are all vibrational interpretations that are about this time-space reality. And so you say, well, I want to use these time-space reality sensors and I want to sense that which is God. And we say, well, look around, sniff around, because there is evidence of it everywhere. But where you're really going to find this God is through your emotions. In other words, it is that which you feel. And so when you feel appreciation, that is you vibrating with that which you call God. When you feel love, we like the vibration of appreciation, or the word of appreciation even better than the word love, because when you are using the word appreciation, you are usually in a closer vibrational harmony with that which is God than when you are using the word love, because love is sometimes a lackful vibration. But feel it. Begin to ask for the feeling of it. And then recognize that it goes everywhere you go. You cannot get away from it. You cannot vibrate out of the range of that which you are calling God. You can pick a frequency that hinders it or causes static, but you cannot get out of range of it. And in the moment that you withdraw your attention from this time-space reality, or meditate, and stop the vibration of resistance and allow the full vibration of who you are, you recognize that and feel that, you see. Sometimes people will say to us, Abraham, I've sort of lost my stability about what I thought was God when I started listening to you because you speak of it so differently. Or they will say, we don't hear you talk about God. And we say, actually, we don't talk about anything else. You are extensions of that source. Sometimes people will say, well, I want to talk about the science of deliberate creation, but the people in my church or the people in my town or the people in my circle aren't ready to hear it in the weird off-the-wall way that Abraham is expressing it. In other words, this is a little too weird for all of us, and so we're just going to talk about it in our generic terms. And we say, if you leave out the connection of source, then you've left out the only thing that really matters, because that is your guidance system. In other words, your connection to source is what everything is about here in your physical existence. You could not exist if it were not for source. People say, well, I'm dead or alive, so I'm physical or non-physical. And we say, you are always non-physical, and sometimes that non-physical is focused here in the physical. But you are so much more than you see or know through your physical eyes. And so when we say that you are all extensions of God, you are all part of that which you call God, it is your hang-up with yourself that makes you then feel a diminishment of God. In other words, sometimes that's what's happened. People think, well, I thought God was better than the sum of all of us. The other thing that is a misunderstanding is that physical beings often think that whatever God is and wherever God is a sort of finished state of perfection. And that is the biggest misunderstanding, because it is an expanding, ever-expanding, eternally growing, eternally expanding being. And all of you are adding to that expansion, you see.
Can you talk about dreams and precognitive dreams and also déjà vu and how that
Pick one.
works? Dream.
What you think and what you feel and what manifests is always a vibrational match. What happens in your dream state is a vibrational match too. So your dreams are sort of advanced announcements of what your vibrational offering is about. Jerry awakened from a dream not too long ago, and he said to Esther as they were chatting about it over breakfast, it just occurred to him in a stronger way than ever before that he is the creator of his dream. He said, if someone is rude to me in my dream, I have given that person that personality and I have put those rude words in their mouth. If someone is loving me in my dream, I've written those lines for them. In other words, it is from my expectation that I have created that. And so your dreamscape is a very wonderful thing. You see, sometimes as you're moving through your day-to-day experience, you're offering your thoughts all over the place, you're offering your vibration all over the place, and before you begin to practice being a little bit more deliberate about what you think, most of you are offering without realizing. In other words, you're thinking about what's on television, or you're thinking about what people are wanting to talk about around you, and you're adding to it. It would be sort of like going to a buffet and just eating anything. Somebody said, well, what would you like? And you say, I don't care, just put anything on, just fill the plate up. And so you just walk with your plate and they just slap things on, and then you go over there and eat it, you see. And you don't do that with your food, and we don't encourage that you do that with your thoughts. That you think of it as a thought buffet while you choose those things to think about that you know would please you. And so what we notice as we see our physical friends moving through their time-space reality is that often they're thinking thoughts not by deliberate intent, and then they are living the manifestation of them later. But once the manifestation occurs, it's harder for you to manifest something and then stand in the manifestation of trouble and change your thought than it would be if you had a dream about it and understood that the dream was letting you know what the content of your normal day-to-day vibration is about. If we awakened from a dream that pleased us, we would say, I'm doing it just right. I'm going to keep thinking about this subject in the way I have, because if this dream is a precursor to what's going to manifest, I'm going to be very happy. But if we had a dream that was uncomfortable, we would stop and say, I've written this dream. I know not necessarily why I've done it, but what would I prefer instead? And we would use our virtual reality to begin to conjure a dreamscape on purpose until it began to reflect in our dreamscape. When you talk about precognitive dreams, that's really what it is about. In other words, everything that you will live is something that you have imagined rather significantly, or it could not be. That's why we're encouraging you not to frighten your children about things, because as you make their fears very vivid and very real, you set them up for bad dreams at least, you see. And so a precognitive dream, a dream that you dream it and then it happens, what that is about is it was already set into motion by the thoughts that you've been offering, and you had the dream as an indicator of what was on the way. Déjà vu is, here's the best explanation of déjà vu that we could ever give. As you are offering your thoughts are coalescing. In other words, every thought that has ever been thought still exists. And as you are moving through your day-to-day experience, and you are having an experience where you are deciphering contrast, and out of that contrast a desire is born, and then another desire is born. They shoot out of you like rockets. Source energy is aware of all of these things that you are wanting and is actually fashioning them, setting them together, putting them together, organizing circumstances and events. Law of attraction is really the manager of all of that. Sometimes you get sort of an advanced view of some of these culminations that are over there, so that then as you walk through space and time toward them, when you step into them, you recognize them. That's what that is about. It's a wonderful thing when you begin to realize that there is no separation between thought and what you are living. And as you begin to take pleasure from guiding your thought, oh, there is so much more pleasure to be had from living your experiences. We would like all of your experiences to be déjà vu. I knew that was coming. 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 I fantasized that. I imagined that. Oh, I felt this. I saw his face. I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming. As you walk into glorious experience after glorious experience, you really intended that, you see.
I have been noticing, obviously the creator of my own experience, that I have been chasing things around my body. One thing happens, another thing happens, maybe at different times of the year, or things are going on, and I want to get a handle on it. Either it's been something that I've invited in, like a body worker working on me and causing damage, or me doing it. I don't know how I'm doing it. I just need to get a handle on it a little bit better.
Well, it's easier to explain in a way that you can hear it why the second thing or the third thing or the fourth thing would come, because once you have a condition that is not pleasing you, it often gets an inordinate amount of your attention. And once it has your attention, then it's a bigger part of your vibration. And once it's a bigger part of your vibration, then you're using that as your temporary excuse not to allow the fullness of your well-being. And we would not spend too much time trying to go back and figure out how it got started. Instead, we'd just stop right where you are and say, for whatever reason, I'm finding reasons to disallow the fullness of my well-being, and I'm not wanting to do that anymore. I'm wanting to feel good. And so when you catch yourself complaining, or when you catch yourself worrying, or when you catch yourself scrutinizing or trying to figure it out, stop in the middle of it and say to yourself, well-being is the natural order of my body. And if I will just relax and allow well-being, eventually the well-being will take me over. In other words, that's what is natural. In your physical environment, it's not the easiest thing in the world to say, and really mean it at first, that the well-being will naturally take me over. Because you have so many people trying to convince you that there are diseases and illnesses and aging and declining and all kinds of things that are destined to take you over, and that if you don't fight against it, that they will. And that isn't true. The opposite of that is true. Well-being is the natural order of your body. And if you will let it be, it will be well, you see. A lot of times people get very carried away in the justifying of where they stand. It's like, here I am, I'm broken a bit, and I'm not very happy being broken, but the reason that I'm broken is because of this and this and this. Well, that doesn't make it go away. That just holds you in the vibration longer, you see. Right. And so if you can make that jump from understanding that that is the reason that it is here, and then choosing other thoughts, then it's a good jump. But sometimes it can be the long way around it. A belief is just a thought that you keep thinking. And sometimes you've picked up thoughts that seem very reasonable because people around you were thinking them, and they seemed like reasonable people. And so you've adopted thoughts that are not wholly in keeping with your absolute well-being. And a releasing of those little by little by little makes you feel freer, it makes you feel lighter, it makes you feel better. But it's not the easiest thing to all of a sudden start changing the way you think about your body, because you've been thinking it for quite a long time. Right. It does take some conscientious, deliberate determination to think different thoughts. We would begin making our statement of desire, understanding that initially at least, we are making it from our place of not having it. So we're in step 1, but we're not in step 3. In other words, we're offering our statement of desire, and we're offering it for our own benefit. As you make a strong statement of desire and you say, I'm making this statement of desire, then later on when you do get into a place of allowing it and you begin to see some evidence of it coming to you, you can make the correlation between what you ask for and what you are now letting in that is very beneficial. It's beneficial because it makes you feel the empowerment that really is yours. And so we would concentrate only for a little bit on asking the question, and then we would let all of our work be upon getting to the place of letting it in, which really for the most part means getting your mind as much as you can off of that subject altogether. Right. And keeping your ear to the ground, so to speak, for negative emotion. When you really want something, and there is not much that you want more than physical well-being, especially if you are not living it as fully as you want, and you are actively choosing a thought that works against it, you're going to feel aggravation. You're going to feel evidence that you are not in alignment with your own desire. And so by keeping an ear to the ground for the way you feel, and when you feel some irritation or some negative emotion, maybe even anger or blame or guilt wafting through you, stop and laugh about it and say, I'm doing that thing I do that's not allowing the well-being in. Because the well-being would be here if I didn't have this habit of doing that thing. And here I am. This negative emotion is helping me to recognize that I'm catching myself right in the act of doing that thing I do.